How we doing? 2022 Compounding Curiosity Annual Review. So I assume this isn't your first episode. I'm very surprised if it is, but hopefully you've listened to a few episodes throughout the year. So today I can go a bit deeper in all the big episodes and guests I had this year, the future episodes and guests I have lined up and planned, some of the stats for this year, the plans overall for the podcast going forward and what I hope to achieve, and then just finishing with some gratitude. So it'll be a quick one today, hopefully 15-20 minutes max. But without further rambling by myself, I'll get into it because this isn't my funnest thing, me rambling into the camera by myself. So this is all new. Well, not new, but it's different. Not my funnest aspect of the podcast, but yeah, we'll get into it. So the big episodes and guests this year. So my top 5 episodes was the TSMC episode with Asianometry, the C Limited deep dive with Punch Card Investor, my interview with Asianometry, just chatting about him, his work, and his YouTube channel, Rachel Lau and Venture Capital in Malaysia, and then a Grab deep dive with Pratyush Rastogi. So if you notice a theme there is a lot of deep dives. So obviously people enjoy deep dives. I enjoy doing deep dives and I'd like to do more of them, but it's a tough thing to do because it's hard to convince guests to put their ass on the line, for lack of a better word, and to be a knowledge expert on a company or a business line. You know what I mean? So it's not super easy compared to, say, just asking someone about their life story, which I also enjoy doing as well. I view books as kind of deep dives as well, but the stats on the episodes with book authors hasn't been as high as these specific deep dives on companies. Maybe people just want to see companies that are investable. Maybe. But that's something to think about going forward and something I'm working on. But yeah, I'll get more into that later. So the future episodes and guests I have lined up coming into this year. So first one in Jan I'll have is Rajiv Mantri. So we chat about venture investing in India and India's economic prospects. So that was super fun, super in-depth, super valuable. And then I have Sean Upton McLaughlin on building a career in China, who's worked over 10 years. Well, he's worked well and truly. He knows what he's doing. So that's super valuable if you're ever thinking about building a career there. And then I have my 50th episode. So there's a special guest, and it is Bernard Leong from Analyze Asia. So I pick his brain on his podcast journey, his lessons, how to improve, where podcasts are heading, and maybe also why podcasts in Asia Pacific are a bit harder than doing it in the US per se. So maybe that's just coping by me, but yeah, I think that was an important aspect and an interesting aspect I hadn't really thought about. So yeah, a few big episodes coming up. Hopefully a few deep dives coming, but as always, it's hard to convince. So if you're ever keen on hearing a deep dive and know someone who might want to talk about it, please send them through. I'm happy to hear it. Plans for the podcast? Oh, sorry, no, stats. We'll talk about stats first before getting to plans. So for stats, overall for the podcast, I've just cracked 30,000 downloads, which I'm happy with. I have no barometer on whether that's higher, lower, where it's meant to be. I think this time last year I was at 15,000 maybe, and I've had a big break middle of the year. So I guess if you could define my whole year, there was like season 1 of the podcast maybe, and then I had my break traveling 5 months through Southeast Asia, and yeah, just didn't have time. But as I finished up my trip, I started booking more guests and getting it back in rolling. So then, yeah, there was that interlude, traveling Southeast Asia, getting a great appreciation for it. And then season 2, I guess, since September, October. But either way, that sort of got me up to episode 47 now. So hopefully keep on cracking on. I've got the next month planned easily, still booking guests. It's a constant juggling effort because I'm doing everything. I'm doing the booking the guests, reaching out, researching the questions, sending them the questions, doing the podcast editing, producing the episode, yada, 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 distribution. It's a lot. Sometimes I get confused and lost where I'm track of. And yeah, so I try and do it in batches. I do a big reach out to guests, and then I do a big bunch of research, making questions, and then it's a whole bunch of recordings in a week, hopefully, maybe. It really depends. People book whenever they want because my Calendly's so open, but here's what it is. But yeah, I enjoy it overall, but I'm working on improving it and developing systems that can help facilitate more growth, I guess, and make my life easier. In terms of my website, I've cracked 14,000 page views on the website. Average per day, I don't even know. But for the Substack, I just cracked 300 email subscribers. So Substack is definitely one I want to develop more and offer something that compels people to sign up for a podcast email. So every time an episode is released, I send out with the show notes, a few takeaways as well, which I think makes it valuable because then you can just sort of skim that. And I give out the transcript because I don't think people who come across the podcast usually know I put so much effort into a transcript, which is, extra work that I do to hopefully make this podcast experience better. Spotify says I have a smidge under 1,000 followers of the podcast. So I don't know how valuable that is, but I think I'm very grateful for those near 1,000 people. I think per episode, like my barometer for what a good episode is like 500 downloads, I guess, is like pretty bloody solid. I'm pretty happy with that. So yeah, if 1,000 Spotify subscribers, maybe, but I need to think about how I listen to podcasts. Like I love Invest Like the Best. I love Analyze Asia, but at the same time, I might only listen to 1 in 3 episodes, if that. And I listen in batches. I might not listen for a month and then binge on 4 or 5 episodes. So I try not to look at stats too obsessively and worry, why is this not performing? It is what it is. I just feel bad for guests sometimes in that I come back and it's like, this episode isn't performing as well as others, or it's like, I still enjoy the conversation. I still love it. Hopefully it's a body of work that you're happy and proud to share as well. And yeah, it's something you can point to people towards as well. So that's how I view it. And I try and make guests live as easy as possible in terms of recording the podcast. So hopefully for them, it's just a conversation. They get to share their ideas and a chance to help others. And then if one person out of that downloads, reaches out to the guest or learns something that's valuable, I think that's all worth it to me. But yeah, is what it is. And lastly, just for the website, my SEO, so search engine optimization, is starting to grow, I think. So yeah, a lot of people want to know who John from Asianometry is. So that's my biggest query that leads people to my podcast. So yeah, I'll take it. It's not something I focus on, but I think providing the transcripts gives Google something to index better, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. Something that's developing naturally, organically, and I'll keep rolling with it from here. Then it comes to plans for the podcast. So my plans are pretty fast and loose. They're not big. So for reference, my plans from last year, I was toying with the ideas of a stock-only podcast, doing intermittent company deep dives, and videos for Allocators Asia. So the stock-only podcast just never happened. Pretty glad it didn't. I think looking back on it now, it'd be too much extra work. Not enough reward. It's not something I'm massively passionate about, especially doing week to week. And then setting up a whole nother podcast around it would be extra work and not something I'm extremely passionate about, so I'll leave it to someone else. The deep dives I also failed on, but I'm still keen to do deep dives on company. I don't want to be a deep dive specific podcast. So is it Andrew Rangeley's Yet Another Valley blog podcast? I'm pretty sure I've got that right. He does stock deep dives. They're amazing. I couldn't do that every week. I like interviewing people and hearing their life story, but I also like intermittently doing a deep dive on a company and changing it up. So that's why I like what I do, because sometimes I interview a fund manager. The next week it's about an author's book. The next week it might just be someone's life story and their life as a content creator. I enjoy changing it up. So that's what I want to continue doing, but I do want to do more deep dives. It's more just finding someone who's willing to put themselves on the line. And yeah, it's tough work for everyone involved, but I think it's worth it. Also for Allocators Asia, the videos I did well. So I think I'm at 700 odd subscribers on YouTube for that. That has slowed down because I just haven't produced a video in a while. I have like 3 in the works that I need to finish. It's just hard juggling time, but I'm making excuses for myself again. But yeah, I do want to focus on videos a few more on Allocators Asia, but I also want to focus on videos for the podcast. So I think people have started consuming video podcasts on YouTube a lot more. And it's something that when I first started, I always said to guests, all right, it's just audio, no video. And I thought it made them more comfortable. And I don't think it's as big as a factor as I think it is. Like a lot of people have, when I've told them, yeah, we'll use video, they behave most the same as other guests I've had. It hasn't been a big palooha that I thought it would be. So video for podcasts, if if the guests are okay with it, if the video is good enough and doesn't need too many edits, I'll probably start sharing a few more. And you can probably see that with Stephen Vines' podcast episode is a video one. John Hawes, Rajiv Mantri's coming up is a video episode. I'm sure there's a few others that I'm forgetting. But yeah, definitely something I want to do more just because it offers an extra thing. And then even then, if I have video for podcasts, it also becomes easier for distribution in terms of YouTube Shorts or TikTok videos if you want to. But again, that's more work for me. Unsure if I'm willing to commit to that in terms of time versus reward and whether I enjoy doing it, but it's an option there that I'm willing to look at. I do want to market myself better. I hate marketing. I hate marketing myself. I'm not very good at it. I look at my American friends and they're so good pumping their own tires and there's an art to it and they can do it well. I struggle with it. I hate it. I'm still figuring it out, but yeah, it's something that's necessary. It's a necessary evil, but I'm still coming to terms with it and how do I best approach it and what my listeners or audience resonates with in terms of how I market myself. Because I think some people do it very well, but I just struggle with it, understanding what I'm good at and enjoy marketing and what audience appreciates. So work in progress. I'll figure it out. In terms of drivers of growth, I do want to focus on LinkedIn more. LinkedIn, I feel, is an opportunity that I can take advantage of where I don't have to be a cringy LinkedIn poster. I can be myself. And there's also less competition, I think, compared to Twitter where everyone's anonymous on Twitter. I'm competing, like Punch Card Investor is a good example. He's great at Twitter, extremely good at it, and it drives a lot of his growth. That's who I'm competing against. But he can't share those same things on LinkedIn because obviously he's anonymous. So for me, I'm not competing with the Punch Card Investors. I'm not competing with the Johns from Asianometry. There's just less competition. And I think the algorithm's not respectful, but because there's no anonymity. There's no anonymous accounts. You don't get flamed as much. Anonymity. No anonymous accounts means people don't really flame you. So obviously it's a bit of a more pleasant experience sometimes. I don't know. I feel on Twitter I've just been bombing lately. It's tough. It's depressing for me. I haven't bothered with it much. It's not my favorite platform at the moment. In terms of what I hope to achieve this year, it's pretty funny. My hopes from last year was it would be amazing to get enough sponsors just to cover the crap that I don't really enjoy doing. The editing, the transcripts, and going through the motion stuff like prepping the episode. I just want to reach out to people I admire, study, research, and ask informed questions, and then do the actual interviews. Everything else, I'd love to outsource. So my plans for this year, I'm in exactly the same position. I would love to just get enough to cover the stuff I don't enjoy doing, and then I get to focus on what I do. I would love to do a conversation every single day. Wake up, have a conversation, interview someone I admire or interested in, even someone new I don't know. I'm happy to hear their story. I love that. I love learning new things. So that would be great. It's just, for every hour I interview, there's probably, I don't even want to know, 10 hours worth of work doing the rest of the episode, editing, transcripts, show notes, distribution, planning, organizing. It's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that isn't my favorite part, but I'm willing to deal with it because it's what I enjoy. But I do want to have fun this year. So I've talked about a few plans and stuff, but there's no real expectations on numbers or what I have to hit, and no comparisons because that's tough too. So it's hard. I think sometimes if you do have one massive goal in saying that I want to be the best podcast in Asia Pacific, even if I fail, I'm still in that top echelon. Whereas for me, I'm pretty happy doing whatever. So am I deemed to mediocrity? I don't know. But I think my life's more enjoyable that way if I choose to take it easy, enjoy what I do. But I do want to reach episode 100 this year. So this will be 47, 52 weeks in a way. 52 weeks in a year gives me 99. So I think I just have to release a couple extra on a Tuesday and I'll reach it. So the plan would be, in a perfect world, do my interviews every week with people, and then maybe there's a few deep dives sprinkled in on a Tuesday, because I think normally I release on a Thursday morning. But do want to reach 100, then I at least have a massive backlog of work. And I think that backlog generates more listeners, audience. It's something to search. But yeah, fun, exciting. And then lastly, I'll just finish with some gratitude. So thank you to everyone. Thank you to listeners. Without you guys, I'm talking into the void, which I am now, but at least I know hopefully there's someone out there listening and getting some value out of this. But yeah, everyone who makes this possible, hopefully this is just the beginning. And I look back on this a few years down the track, and it's pretty funny to look at how unsure of things I was and how unorganized, and yeah, it'd be cool to look back on. So I think I'm very grateful to listeners, because even though I don't have the same numbers distribution as Tim Ferriss, Analyze Asia, Patrick O'Shaughnessy's Invest Like the Best, or David Senra's Founders Podcast, I think what I do have is an audience who's highly engaged, highly curious, and just self-motivated. So you guys are the real MVPs, and I appreciate that. But yeah, I appreciate hearing every time listeners reach out. Anything, hearing just something makes my whole week, and I take a little screenshot and I'll look back on later. Is it the healthiest habit? I don't know, but it keeps me going. I appreciate feedback. Even if you want to leave anonymous feedback, I have a Google Forms that I'll include in the show notes and links to that. But so that's always way you can just, if you don't like the way that I talk, if you don't like my editing style, if you want to see a certain type of guest or not see a certain type of guest, you can leave that anonymous feedback. And yeah, Bob's your uncle. That's cool as. I don't mind. No worries. But yeah, and a last huge thank you to my guests. So, I mean, yeah, this isn't a podcast about me. So without my guests, this podcast doesn't exist. So thank you to them for showing faith in me, because I'm just a random email in their inbox half the time asking for an hour of their time. But yeah, they give me their time, their patience. I'm extremely grateful. Yeah, it really makes this all worth it, just meeting people. And then when I traveled through Southeast Asia, getting to meet up with some of my friends that I've interviewed, it's the best thing ever. I recommend anyone that's curious about starting their own podcast, do it, because the benefits extremely outweigh all the hard work that you put in, even for me already. So yeah, it's good. Thank you so much. I have the best gig in the world. So yeah, just wrapping up. If you know someone that's interested in being on a guest on the podcast, or even a podcast sponsor, yeah, get in touch. I want to make this podcast bigger and better this year, and I'm starting to get a process that facilitates that, and I think it's getting more streamlined, and I'm working on it. But yeah, cheers. I appreciate everyone who listens, everyone who comments, everyone who leaves feedback, people that put me into contact with other guests or future guests and willing to put in a good word for me. I appreciate that immensely. Yeah, I have the best job in the world. I'm extremely grateful. I hope everyone has had a good Christmas and a good New Year's. Thank you so much. I can't say thank you enough, and I don't know how to wrap this up, but cheers. I'll see you soon. Hopefully you enjoy it. I've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the new year.